The human body needs to mostly eat higher fat, moderate protein, and lower carbohydrate in order to survive and thrive. What the heck does that look like? Let's look at it. All right, so compared to the standard American diet, that is what we're working against. The standard American lifestyle, the diet involved here, we're considering that the enemy, okay? This is what's producing very, very unhealthy people. So when we look at the standard American diet, okay, primarily carbohydrate, okay, that's why we say low carb. We're really working against this. So primarily carbohydrate, primarily in the form of corn products, refined sugars, like stuff that we know is not good for the body. Paired with, then the next highest thing is fat, primarily derived from these, vegetable oils, these industrialized seed oils, bad fat, which then actually makes all the effects of this high carb way, way worse. Then a pretty low amount of protein, okay, over here like 15% or so, some of the good stuff that's actually helping us feel satisfied, helping us build muscle, the lowest of the low, right? This is what we're working against, okay? So we know the human body actually thrives on fat. When we are metabolically flexible enough to burn fat for fuel, the body does really well, okay? So there's a really large spectrum that we're going to look at here that we think qualifies as higher fat, moderate protein, and lower carbohydrate. So let's look at the extreme. The newly popularized carnivore diet, all meat. So a well-balanced carnivore diet is going to end up being about 30% protein, about 70% fat, okay? Pretty much zero carbohydrate. So does that qualify as high fat, moderate protein, low carb? You better believe it does. Now let's look at the super popular ketogenic diet. Does that qualify as high fat, moderate protein, low carb? Sure as heck it does. 75% fat mostly. My numbers are off here. Just realized that. If we said something like 20% on the protein, did I say fat or protein? Doesn't matter. 75 fat, 20 protein, and something like 5 on the carbohydrate. So having some form of carbohydrate, leafy greens are like a go-to on a ketogenic diet. But basically your carbohydrate's not adding up to much. You're using fat as that primary fuel source. Yes, obviously that is high fat, moderate protein, low carb. Guess what else is? Something that looks like this. Maybe, so if we split this evenly, 33, 33, 33 and change on all those. If we went a little higher, so let's say 37% fat, we went a little bit lower, kind of right in the middle, 33 on the protein and carbohydrate at 30. Guess what? We're still calling this higher fat, moderate protein, and lower carbohydrate. Because what we're trying to say here is we're really working against this right here. And remember, this is not the primary thing we're saying about nutrition. The first thing we're saying is we need to eat real food. We need to avoid the industrialized oils, okay? We need to avoid the refined sugars. And then when we are looking at real foods, and then we're going here, like we're in a totally different place comparing even these two things right here. Especially if you're an athlete, right? Your demand for carbohydrates is a little higher. Just to give you an example, if I'm plugging in like my body weight and what's going to support me with this ratio right here, 30%, I should be eating upwards of 200 grams of carbohydrate here. Strict keto folks are gonna like poop their pants if they hear 200 grams of carbohydrate. But in the right context, we think this is very individualized. that can absolutely be a healthy diet, right? So what do we mean by high fat, moderate protein, low carbohydrate? Well, we kind of mean a lot of things, and it's really dependent on you, your goals, your activity, a lot of different things. But there's a pretty big spectrum that we think we can obtain health and optimal health depending on a lot of factors with pretty broad spectrum. But the main thing we're working against, standard American diet. We know that nobody thrives off that.